Hello. Welcome, 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 everybody. I'm so excited. I love interviewing cool, awesome people and introducing cool, awesome people that I know to all the other cool, awesome people that I'm connected to on Facebook. So that is what we're going to be doing today.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me.
So welcome to my friend Kate Christine. And what we're going to be talking about today is activating your intuition. And for some people, that title alone, you'll be like, ooh, I'm interested. Other people might be like, what does that even mean? Is intuition even a real thing? I don't know about that. Why is Ann talking about that? We got the whole gamut because it's, like my whole everybody on their Facebook. And I love that because I think the whole concept of intuition is absolutely fascinating. And we are going to go kind of deep on it, right? Like we're going to be, it may be woo-woo, but it's also like some pretty grounded stuff around it. And between the two of us, I think we're going to have a pretty cool conversation about it. So welcome, Kate, and I will just introduce people to you a little bit, and you can introduce yourself further. So Kate Christine is a born intuitive, which, by the way, we all are. We just don't all know,
Yes. Well,
right?
and that's one
Right?
of the key things. We all
Yes.
are born with it, but then sometimes we just put it aside.
Yeah. Or just don't. I mean, I would say the hardest thing about intuition is trusting it, right? But also educator. She has a real passion for empowering people to live the life they're here to live, right? And create lives that they love and desire. She has degrees in marketing and in French. I didn't know that.
Yes.
I
I was a
have
French interpreter for 15 years, so quite a long time.
wow. I
Yeah.
have I have this. I studied French in high school in 1 year of college, and I have this set phrase. Okay, this is the only thing I really remember how to say anymore, but I say it well enough that it gets me in trouble. And here's the phrase, right? J'ai suivi le français à l'école, mais il y a plus que 40 ans et j'ai oublié beaucoup. But I say it like well enough that they think I actually, it's like, no, that's all I remember.
You're like, that's just a little bit. Like, let's just stop there.
All right. And you have so much of a background. It's a little astounding to me. I'll just give a little bit of it. So, master's in French and global management, degrees in rapid eye. You have advanced studies in neuroscience, craniosacral, the Silva Method, which we're going to be talking about, rapid eye technology. Um, Sound healer, yoga therapist. I mean, it's like ridiculous. It could be like 3 pages, right? Um, and fabulous. And with all of those different tools that you have in your rather large tool belt and toolbox, you help people change their lives, right? Release stress, release trauma, but also activating their own intuition, right? And their own clairvoyance so that they can really, make powerful changes for themselves as well, right? So, how did it come about that you kind of got this, rather vast background? Like, how did you get into the healing arts?
I, Honestly, it came down to my mom. She first introduced it. She was a registered nurse. My dad got into some pretty serious car accidents, had
Mm,
several surgeries, just a lot of pain, a lot of anger about all of that. And so my mom was just looking for other alternatives. So,
mhm,
she did acupuncture, acupressure, she did tapping. Most people are familiar with EFT and that. So I was introduced at a very young age about all of this because she was looking for some solution to
mhm.
alleviate the pain that my dad was going through.
Yeah.
And also there were some brain issues that happened with him as well. He had fallen several times. And then, when you get a little wonky and you don't know why, and
Mhm.
you've done several surgeries and that's not answering, it's
Right.
not giving you the solution that you desire. That's how I first got into it. So I was not the cool kid with the awesome lunch. I was the kid who had the safflower butter and honey sandwich,
Mhm.
with like the plantain chips that people were like, what is that? I'm like, yeah. And so, like no one wanted to trade lunch with me when I was a kid because it wasn't cool. But now, fast forward, now that's kind of the cool hip thing. Like everyone's doing it. It's just
Right.
back when I was a kid, they're like, what's wrong with your lunch? you know? So that's how I was first introduced to a lot of those things, including brain gym. That's one of the key things, visual
Mhm.
training. A lot of this that people are like, oh, I've heard of that. Well,
Right.
go back to like the 80s and 90s. Most people are like, what? What are you talking
What's
about?
that? But no, brain gym is pretty well recognized now.
Yeah.
But yeah, but back then it was new, and sometimes those early adopters end up really benefiting from stuff that a lot of the rest of people, it takes a long time to catch up, right?
Yeah.
Um, so what are some of you've trained in a lot of different modalities. What are some of your favorites?
Some of my favorites, I really love Rapid Eye because it's dealing all with neuroscience. Specifically, we do some of the most magical things when we sleep at night, and most people have no idea what we do. When we
Mhm,
go to sleep, our body is discharging a lot of stress. But if you're not getting your full amount of sleep,
mhm,
people carry that stress with them. And so with Rapid Eye, it's basically EMDR and steroids. EMDR is fabulous. It's great. However, you
mhm.
can go way beyond that because we store different thoughts, memories, feelings, emotions, experiences, not only in different parts of our head and our brain, but all throughout our body. And
Right,
so we can release that or deprogram it and reprogram it very quickly because you're not just processing a memory, you're processing a whole neural pathway of memories.
right. Mhm,
So I really love
right,
that modality. Another one of my favorites is Silva Method because with Silva Method, you get to basically use all your tools within you that you can create quite literally the future that you desire. So if you
mm,
don't like where you're at, that's okay. You don't have to be like, I got this deck of cards and I'm going to keep it. You can say, no, thank you. I'm going to exchange it out and I'm going to do something what I actually would like to do. And so with those two, it's like if there's unprocessed trauma, that's under the hood or in the subconscious, it
mhm.
can easily be shifted and changed specifically with Rapid Eye. And then with Silva, then you learn how to create the future. So you're not
Right,
recreating the past. But a lot of people do that. A lot of
right,
people literally just get stuck in a pattern, their parents meant well, and whatever they learned from their parents, they just keep recreating at no fault of their own. And they
right,
finally realize, wait, I'm creating by default, and I don't like my
right.
default.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of it is they're either being just like their parents or just opposite, right? Like a lot of times it's one of those, right?
Exactly. It's the
Or a
extreme.
combination. Actually, it's usually a combination, like just like
Yeah.
them about this kind of stuff, totally different. And also, just because I find this fascinating, I think the same thing with siblings also,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
We also have that, like, I'm going to be just like, and not realizing that I'm the youngest. So that's partly
Yeah.
why I'm more aware of it. Like I remember having this, thought, I was like in my 30s and something came up in conversation and I caught myself having the thought, oh, I'm more like one of my brothers about that. I'm not like that brother. I'm like this brother about it. And I just caught myself having the thought and I suddenly was like, oh my God, I do that about everything. I'm always like,
Wow.
isn't that interesting? And
It is.
I was just like, oh my God, I do that all the time. I don't have to do that anymore. I can actually just be, like, I could
You
say
get
that
to choose.
my own thing about it, right? It doesn't have to be a choice between how that brother thinks about this versus how that brother thinks about this. Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
really
isn't
interesting.
that so fascinating though? Because
Yeah,
if you
it
look
is.
at where you're at, it's a culmination of, whatever in your childhood. So the family you grew up in, the educational system, the
Yeah,
socioeconomic background, the
yeah.
culture, did your mom work? Did she not work? Was she a stay-at-home mom? All of those things formulate and they're types of programs that
Hmm.
then we continue to play out. And
Yeah.
then here you had this realization like, wait a second, I don't have to do A or
Yeah,
B,
really, it was, I
brother.
was like, oh my God, I've been doing this my whole life.
Yeah. Then you're like, wait a
And I
second, I can
didn't
choose.
know, right?
Yeah.
Crazy, crazy,
Well,
crazy.
and it's wild though, because if you look at it, that's kind of how the human being system is set up.
Right.
The first 8 years of our life, from womb to eight, we basically absorb everything to say, okay, this is our world. This is how
Right.
our
Yeah, we
world
don't have
works.
much of a filter before then to be
Oh
able to
no,
decide,
you
do I
have
agree
no
with this or
filter.
disagree with this? I mean, we could like something or not like something. We're full of liking and not liking at
Yeah.
all ages, but we don't necessarily feel like we can choose whether whether we believe it or not. It's just we just take it on.
Exactly. And the thing is too, then literally our brain, it's a computer, it's literally just a program running. So we're just
Yeah.
playing out the programs of all the patterns, all the beliefs, all the systems from childhood.
Yep.
Unless you basically say, wait a second, time out.
Mhm.
I didn't like my childhood. I am not repeating that. And that's when people are like, oh, I gotta find a different way. But for the most part, Most of the
Mhm.
human race, they're like,
Yep.
oh, I'm just going to keep doing what I was taught to do, as that, my parents had good intentions. And so
Yep.
that's the part, it's so
Yep.
fascinating, because with people, when they had a childhood that was not awesome, they're like, I'm going to do something different. And sometimes they'll swing to that opposite end of the spectrum, and
Yep.
it's not what they desire either. So they're like, well,
Right.
that didn't work and that didn't work. So where do I go from here?
Totally. All right. So let's talk about, so now we've kind of set that scene, like this is life. This is kind of how this is the default sort of, we have these factory settings, right? Or I guess it was
Yeah,
like the
basically.
factory settings that, then they got upgraded, they got changed and warped and all that stuff in those first 8 years or so. What do we do about that now, right? So let's talk about Silva Method probably is the main one of like, what have you seen as possible to shift all that using that?
So with the Silva method, we teach a series of tools, and we
Mhm.
also teach you how to get into a different brainwave state. So right now we're in the beta brainwave state. That's pretty
Mhm.
normal. Most people operate in that. And then they'll go into the alpha brainwave state, like right before you go to sleep and right
Mhm.
when you wake up. And then, as you know, we have circadian rhythm that will go
Mhm.
from alpha down to theta, sometimes even down to delta, and then all the way up around. So we kind of just do this, however many cycles per night. Well,
Mhm.
why does it matter to get into a different brainwave state? Is because we can change things. We can change our thoughts, we can change our feelings, we can change our belief systems. And so
Mhm.
that's what I teach in the Silva method. I teach you how to get into these different brain level states. And then you can start shifting and changing. You're like, you know what? I don't really like this pattern that I've been doing. So
Mhm.
I'm going to reprogram my brain in this different brainwave state to do something different, so you can have
Mhm.
a different outcome.
So let's like give examples, right? So let's say someone's recognizing that they kind of keep getting into the same kind of relationships over and over, and
Yeah.
they're getting that like, I don't want to keep repeating that. And
Mhm.
and they especially like, I've known this for a while. Like I've been for at least 10 years that I have this pattern. Somehow I can't seem to stop myself. Um, let's start with that. Like, can you give an example of like
Yeah. Well, absolutely.
how would that play out, right?
So for example, if someone, comes to the class and they're like, "Hey, I have this unpleasantry like relationship that I keep repeating over and over."
Yep.
Well, we know that there is something in the subconscious where there is a program and there's a pattern that's playing out. And it
Right.
typically has happened from womb to 8. So I see this quite a lot, is that, when the mother is pregnant, like after someone's conceived, that time in the womb, whether people realize it or not, whatever the mother is thinking and feeling, the fetus is thinking and feeling. Why does it matter? Who cares? Well,
Mhm.
if the mother is in an unpleasant or abusive relationship and is like, I feel trapped, I don't want to be here, I'm stuck, I can't get out. Well, guess
Right.
what? That fetus is going to be born with all those same thoughts, feelings, and programs that are quite literally running in the person's brain.
Mhm.
And so then they may get into these relationships where they keep feeling trapped and I can't get out and I can't get out. And it's like, well, how do I fix that? Well, we'll use the different Silva tools to get into the different brainwave state, see where that's happened, remove it, change it, and replace it with a positive of that would be empowering for the person.
Mhm.
And so as a result, then they can start to shift everything. And then they also can start to know, like, this is one of the best things. When you see danger walking, you're not like, oh my gosh, let me walk right towards it. Because you activate your intuition. So you're like, wait a second, I know what this looks like. I know what it feels like. I know what it smells like. It tastes
Yep.
like. I
I
know that
can
this
I
is
can
not
see
for
that
my
coming a
best.
mile away now. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. You're like, oh, thank you so much. And move over. Just
Right.
get out of my way. Because as you receive more information, you become more aware and more
Yeah.
conscious of that. Then it gives you more choices. That you can say, wait a second, I am on this date and I am feeling those same feelings. Something that's a heads up right there. I'm getting a
Right.
heads up, I'm getting an awareness. Maybe I need to put the brakes on this to be like, you know what? Thank you so much. You know what? I'd like to call it an early night. Don't need a nightcap, but we'll be in touch. And then you can go home and you can process it. You can work on yourself, go into meditation, and then start to see what's really going on. You're like, wait a second. But that's the first thing when you're like, something is the same and this is not the same that I desire.
Right. Absolutely. So, so let's talk a little, and we're just kind of a little bit, but like, yeah, what's the Silva method really about? And like, how did you get into it and how do you use it?
Okay, so what the Silva method is about, it's literally about using all of your brain. Most people, we use about a little portion of our brain. Most people hang out one side of the brain all day. They usually don't go whole brained. What the Silva
Hmm.
method does is it teaches you how to get whole brained. So you're using the right and the left and the front and the back. So you're whole brained. So you're using all information and you have access to all the information so you can make a better choice. And you can even say, okay, I know this information. I know trouble is coming. You can make a different choice, or you can say, I know trouble's coming and I'm still going to choose that. But you have the
Right.
awareness and the information. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And we have somebody who's going to come join us live to, you may have some questions. So we'll do that.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll let Danelle come join in and
So, I mean,
add to
we
this.
just have a lot of options when we
Mhm.
come forward with that to say, oh, I have more information. Now that I have more information, what do I want to do with this information? Whereas a lot of other patterns and programs, when you're only using part of your brain, you just
Mhm.
automatically do it and you don't even know why.
Right.
When you have more information, you're like, oh, I can do more with this as opposed to just hanging out and doing this one thing.
Absolutely. So, and welcome Danelle, who's joining into this live. And we're gonna keep talking, but there'll be some time later that you could ask Kate some questions yourself too. So great to have you here. Um, so um, why we've sort of started to get into this, but like, why have you have all these different tools in
Yeah.
your tool belt, right? So why is Silva kind of one of your main go-tos?
One of the reasons why I like Silva Method the most is because I teach people how to activate their intuition and how to use their intuition. But
Mhm.
then as you continue to practice the meditations and you continue to practice the tools, your
Mhm.
clairvoyance, it increases. It just keeps getting better and better and better.
Right.
So quite
Let's talk
literally,
about that. That's getting
yeah,
into the easy stuff. Let's talk about that. And then again, some people are going to be like, is clairvoyance even real? What do you mean? And indeed, not everyone necessarily even means the same thing by that word. So why don't we start by you defining, like, what do you mean when you say clairvoyance? I think it'll be a good place to start.
clairvoyance, it's where you can see with your mind's eye, you can see beyond your physical sight. So,
Mhm.
as we both know, we are both forms of energy.
Mhm.
We emanate energy, we receive energy all day long.
Yep.
And so as
Yep.
such, when you have your intuition intact, you can walk into a
Mhm.
room, and I know a lot of people have felt this. You walk into a room and you're like, "Oh my gosh, someone just had a fight." That is awkward. And you can feel the energy of the room.
Yeah, go
And
ahead. Sorry.
so okay. And so you can feel the energy of the room. Well, when you've activated your intuition, you can go into a meeting and you may have a room full of people and
Mhm.
their energy will be telling you information. It's just information. So you may be like, "Oh, this person got in a fight with their spouse." That person is like, "Oh, when is this meeting going to be over?" And that person is thinking, are we at Friday yet? So literally, you can start to pick up the energy of the different people. And if you're leading that meeting, then as such, you can start to make some different choices to say, hey, I can tell, and you can even speak it out loud. I can tell no one really wants to be here. However, we do have a decision to make. I want to make sure that we get all aligned and we come together and we do it in an appropriate manner. We're all on the same page. In fact, we could probably get this meeting done in about 10 minutes. Is everyone on board? So really starting to use
Total game changer, right? Total
yeah,
game changer as compared to trying to, get people engaged or shift something by just, I'm a big fan of like the power of just saying what's so,
yes.
right?
Well, exactly. So it's using that information in a way that you can create better for whether it's the meeting, or let's say that you have a family get together, or with your immediate family, maybe you do a family type of council. Like
Yeah.
one of the things that I have thought would be so awesome to do with a family is that here you have a family, you get together once a month, and you're like, we're going to talk about budget, we're going to talk about 1, 2, 3, we're going to talk about our vacations, and we're going to talk about what we can do, what we can't do, so we're all on the
Yeah.
same page. Well, if you're picking up on the energy of your kids as you're going into this and they're like, I don't want to be here. And you're like, wait a second, do you want to go on vacation or not? We've got to talk about what we can do and can't do. Then you can start to shift the whole conversation.
Yeah. And it certainly kind of gets back to what we were talking about, that everyone, I think, is what we're calling intuitive, right? And again, you can, there's different definitions of what that is, right? But
Yeah.
I think the bottom line is that we all have times when we do have this sense of like just knowing something, right?
Yes.
We're just like having that sense of something. We feel uncomfortable. We feel ostracized, right? We feel sort of
Yeah.
other. We
You're
feel,
picking up on the energy.
yeah, right. We feel like this is not a friendly space for me, or this is not a
Yeah.
safe space for me. Or we feel like we're, I mean, just all of those different things. And and the opposites too, right? Like, oh, I feel accepted here. I feel like I belong here, right?
I
And
feel safe here.
yeah, exactly. And we very often, we're just not putting that in the context of calling it something like intuition, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a power in just getting that. It's like, yeah, you're sure, you're picking up on things on a mostly subconscious level. You're probably picking up on body language. You're probably picking up on, all kinds of things. But I think what we're, and tell me if you agree, we're saying is, yeah, it's all those things, right? It's picking up on body language. It's picking up on this. It's picking up on tone of voice. It's picking up all those things. And there's another level of it that's possible where even if your eyes were
Absolutely.
closed and or you were, they were behind, didn't have visual cues, there's still stuff that you can get. And that's kind of what I want to like, yeah, explore
Yeah.
into more.
So getting into the juicy part of intuition, people call it your sixth sense.
Yeah.
And with your sixth sense, there's lots of different types of clairs. Clairvoyance, that's where you have a clear seeing. So when you're clairvoyant, that you can see beyond your normal eyesight, your whole brain is operating. You are whole brained, that you can receive this information. You also have clairaudience, where you hear things. You also have claircognizance, where you know things. You just know that you know that you know in your heart of hearts. We also have clairgustience, clairolfactory, so where you taste things. Like I can tell you when I go into certain spaces and there is something off, I get this acidic taste in my mouth. Like, oh, it's a cue, it's information that my body is telling me. My body's receiving the information to say, hey, be on alert, something's not right here. And so there are all these different forms so we have all the clairs. On top of that, we also have observation. We also have detection, and we have perception, in addition to that, sensing. So we have all of these types, what I consider all of intuition. So when people are like, oh yeah, intuition, I'm like, yeah, it's your spidey senses and beyond, because you're able to pick up information, or the way I really love to call it is the language of energy. So with your intuition intact, it's you are speaking, you are hearing, you are tasting and touching, you are knowing this language of energy and what the information means. So, my body, I'll just say, a lot of people, we're all born with it, but usually in childhood, that's where we're programmed out of using it. But there are
because we're
some things
told
that you just know.
that it's our imagination, or we're told to just be quiet about it, or we're told to, especially, I think, too often, if a kid's not feeling safe, right?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
but that's not heard or listened to, right? And then they learn to not trust that, and not trust others, and then they don't want to say it again, right? Because
Absolutely.
first time.
Absolutely. And so these are some of the key things. I've worked with quite a few children, especially if there's fears in place, whether it's from the guardians or the children. And I was working with one child because this child in particular was really fearful, because this child had a knowing when someone was going to pass. Usually had a period of 2 weeks to a month when this child knew someone was going to pass away, and felt that this was a curse. I'm like, this is not a curse. This is information. And why is this information? It's information so you can act upon it, or you can say something or do something prior to it. So I'm like, this is actually, so in my opinion, when people are like, that's this, I'm like, it's a superpower. I'm like, you got a superpower activated. And
why not relate to it that way, right?
well, not only that, it's like we all have them. And if you start acknowledging them, then more can show up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then
it's
the thing is,
just to say, there's certainly documented cases of animals knowing that, right? Like animals being, knowing when someone is going to die. They've been, there's like nursing and stuff like
Absolutely.
that, right? So why couldn't a child have that same? That's
Well, not only a child, but also an adult.
also an adult.
So
Yeah.
it's really, that's another ability. It's another part of someone's intuition. And so
Mhm.
there's lots of different forms of intuition. You said, oh, let's unpack a little bit more of the clairvoyance. I love clairvoyance. It gives you information. And then with that information, you can choose to act accordingly. So, most people had it as kids and then it turned off. Well, you can turn it
Mhm.
back on. And that's what Silva Method is all about. And one of the
Right.
reasons why I like it so much is that he launched this in 1944. Then he researched for another 20 years. So he has some pretty solid research on what it can do for you. And then literally in 4 days, if you do all the meditations, you show up, you activate your intuition. So I have had some people take the 4 days and then they go back to work and they're like, you didn't tell me I would hear people's thoughts. I'm like, I don't know how each person is going to act or react. But I said, well, that's really helpful information. So you can say, hey, I'm sensing, notice the word sensing. I'm
Mhm.
sensing that you're feeling this. What's going on?
Mhm.
I'm like, wait, what? How did you pick up on that? That's your intuition.
Right.
So, and there's other people where, because as a part of the 4 days, um, we do remote healing and
Mhm.
we do remote viewing. So I
Mhm.
teach remote viewing and I teach remote healing as a part of it. And that's something that we call caseworking. So when we're doing caseworking, every time you do 10 cases, your clairvoyance increases. And so the more that you help and then you put out goodness, the more it comes back
Mhm.
to you. It's a
Mhm.
reciprocal thing. So it's mutually beneficial.
Mhm. That's awesome. So let's talk about, I mean, I know your answer is really anybody can activate their intuition, but I think some people probably feel more of a struggle with that than others, right?
Absolutely.
So, could for a lot of reasons, but it could be, especially if people have kind of like ADD or ADHD, and so they may have that more. So can we talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So this is part of one of the reasons why I love teaching the class is that literally we take you step by step. We ask that you show up all 4 days and for the whole amount of time, because what we're doing is you are fully cognizant, you are able to make choices, but we are assisting to reprogram your brain to work for you so that you
Hmm.
can see beyond your normal eyesight. You can feel beyond your normal self. And so as such, when you have more information, then you can choose to make different choices. So you're like, oh, I have more information. I feel like this is a good choice. And you may say, I'm going down this path. And then you get more information. You're like, now I'm going to pivot and I'm going to do something a little differently. So
Right.
as a result, the more you do the tools, the better it gets, the better it gets, the better it gets. And
Mhm.
it becomes really fun because then you can pick up on energy very quickly. So if you're like, oh, you go into a space and it doesn't feel good, then you also have the tools on how to clean up the energy too. So it's not
Well,
just,
sure, there's that too.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, because
Mhm.
there's some, I'm sure you have gone into some places where you're like, oh, there's some, there's something
Mhm.
good here. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I want to clean this out. Well, you'll also have the tools to be able to do that and so much more. So it's really fun. We do a whole bunch of meditations. We reprogram yourself so that you can receive all of this. And
Mhm.
then you are let loose where you get to go and do if you so choose. There's some people who take it and they're like, oh, okay, that was great. I wanted to just accomplish this one thing. Perfect. Great. That's what works for you. There's other people who use it throughout their lifetime. Like there's some pretty big names who are Silva graduate. And I mean, like Louise Hay, everyone knows her as like, she's
Mhm.
like the mother of self-help. Well, she's
Right.
the Silva Method graduate. Also,
Right.
Wayne Dyer, a Silva Method graduate. Even
Right.
Jack Campbell, Silva Method graduate. So all
Right.
these people learned how to use these tools to create greater in their own lives.
Beautiful. Um, so let's talk about that a little bit. So how does it develop? How does it differ from other kind of mindfulness kind of practices?
I would say it's quite different from other mindfulness practices because with other mindfulness practices, you're in your beta brainwave state where you're like, okay, uh, I hear this a lot. I work with a lot of clients that it's like they get a panic attack, and it's like, okay, you're right here in the now. Okay, grab your chair. Name
Hmm.
3 things that you see. That is a great mindfulness practice. You are in
Yeah.
the beta brainwave state. And there
Right.
was something that triggered the body that said, this is not safe, that your mind went to some past memory or something. So we got
Mhm.
to bring you right back to the present. The
Right.
difference is with this is we're teaching you how to get into a different brainwave state and how to use tools in that different brainwave state to create what you desire.
Mhm.
And so, what one person desires, like I've had some people say, you know what, I want to be a billionaire. I'm like, perfect. So then you know how you have to program your brain to act accordingly. There's other people that are like, you know what, I just want a better job. Okay, cool. Then you're going to program yourself in this different brainwave state so that you can start to receive that. And so, like I said, we have lots of different tools in the different brainwave states that we use so you can accomplish and receive what ultimately you desire to. And the biggest
Mhm.
thing is if you're like, hey, I'm doing it and I'm not getting it, that's
Mhm.
feedback. That's
Right.
feedback. And that's an opportunity to say, what's in my subconscious? What's under the hood that
Yeah.
is not working for me, that's working against me, that I got to go clean up? So I look at it as there's an opportunity. There's an
Mhm.
opportunity to do some cleanup under the hood. And when you do the cleanup under the hood, then you're like, oh my gosh, it's like you have a golden brick road that you're like, let me move forward and let's have
Right.
this be so easy.
I love it. Um, so let's, I think it'd be great could you maybe just share a couple more kind of examples of things that you've seen from people that you work with? You can share for yourself, but
Yeah.
it helps to like get some stories.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I can even just share a couple of my own. So you asked me earlier and I realized, oh, I didn't answer part two of the question. How did I get into Silva?
Yeah.
So to put it a long story short, my father had passed away. I became trustee over my mother, and a very complicated, unpleasant situation. And so I have lots of tools. I was using all my tools and it was not working. So
Mhm.
I literally went into meditation and I said, I need help.
Mhm.
Show me, tell me, direct me, because I need help. And I desire to do the best that I can to help my mother and help her enjoy the last part of her health and her life. And then also that I can just move forward with ease. And I was in meditation. I heard the word Silva. I had no idea what it meant. No
Mhm.
idea. So what did I do? I went to the internet and I looked it up and I was in a class by that weekend. And
Mhm.
so I went through the class and I started learning the techniques and I started
Mhm.
using them immediately. And so there were quite a few things that changed in my life directly in using that. In addition to that, a very simple technique is we go into meditation and you program for what you desire.
Mhm.
Sometimes it can just be really fun. You can be playful about it if you're like, you
Mhm.
know what? I was programming, I really wanted these white trellises. I wanted these white trellises for the garden. And so I kept looking and looking. I couldn't find the ones I wanted online. So I couldn't find them on Facebook Marketplace or anywhere else. So I was like, I'm just going to let that be. I looked on OfferUp. When you look at everything next door and you're like, it's not here. So
Right.
I just let it go. And then literally a couple months later, my neighbor had white trellises. I was like, hey, do you want these? And I said, why did you think of me? And she said, I just was thinking of you. I thought you wanted them. It was literally the synchronicity, even though it was like 2 months prior. I just kind of let it go. And then I started focusing on programming to do other things and to bring other things to me. And then it happened. And I just remember thinking, I love how easy this is. That you
Mhm.
put it out there, you program for it, and then you just kind of put it aside and then it showed up. Another cool example. So I worked in entertainment for about 10 years prior,
Mhm.
and I started programming because I love working on set. It's so much fun. It's just such a blast. And I started programming. I'm like, I would really love a direct booking. It's just so fun to get a direct booking and be in a film where you're acting and you're doing your thing. So I just started programming for that. And literally it was 2 weeks later, my agent called and she was like, hey, Kate, you speak French, right? And I'm like, yeah, I was an interpreter. She's like, yeah, I want you to submit for this role. So just, are you willing to? And I said, oh yeah, absolutely. Submitted. And then the next thing I got a call, she's like, hey, Kate, you're booked. And I was like, wait, what? And she said, right now, you're only a featured extra, but I have a feeling because her intuition is also activated. She said, I have a feeling you're going to be upgraded. And I said, oh my gosh, that'd be amazing. And so I went to set, I was there and I was programming. And then literally what happened, an hour in, the UPM And the director came up to me and they're like, "Hi, Cate." I said, "Hi." And they said, "We'd like to upgrade you right now. Can we mic you?" And I said, "Absolutely." And so I went on mic and then, did the role, and it was awesome. It literally took 2 hours and I was done. I'm like, that was so much fun. So using my mind power to go ahead and create that. I've just used it for so many different things from, have you ever been on a plane and then things go awry? And then you're like, let's get this back in order. Then start using your tools so you can get back on track,
Yep.
and make up the time, get to where you need to get done. So I use it on a daily basis, and it just becomes really fun because you get to choose what you bring into your life and what you remove from your life. And if there are things that are not awesome and they keep showing up, that's a huge opportunity to look under the hood and to do some subconscious work. And so we teach you also how to do that. We have different tools that you can use if you're like, you know what, I didn't grow up in the best of circumstances. How can I make that better? I'm like, oh my gosh, this can be so much fun. And they're like, fun? I've always thought that like you have to go to therapy. I'm like, therapy is an option. This is also another option. So you can work on yourself. You can work with a professional as well. You can work with several professionals, but you now have tools that you can say, you know what, I
Right.
need to revisit this and see what programs started running. And I've got to deprogram those programs. And now I've got to create something different.
Right.
And you have, like, once you got the tools, then you can keep using them. So one of the things that I do is I teach the 4-day, and then I also do, I give in a private session. And so once they do a new student package, like they come to the 4-day and then they're like, I'm using my tools. They can book the session with me. That's just part of the training to say, hey, I'm using these tools. I want to create it, or I want to pivot or do something different. How do I do that? And then I can share lots of different ways how I've done it and what's worked.
Right. Beautiful. I love it. Um, so let's talk about yeah, how to if people I mean how would people start to learn, what's a great way to start to learn how to do this? Because you have a training that's coming up soon, right?
I do. I
So
do.
tell us about that one.
So I do have a training that's coming up. I'm doing an introduction to the Silva method. And
Mhm,
so this is where if you're thinking, maybe I want to do it, but I'm not quite sure. So
mhm,
it's 90 minutes. We'll do 2 live meditations. So you'll get a sample of what it feels like to
mhm,
do something that's similar to the Silva method. And
mhm,
then I'll discuss also what happens from a neuroscience perspective when you do use these tools, and then how
mhm.
you can create differently with that.
Right.
So that is on November 17th, and that
Mhm.
starts at 10 a.m. Pacific. It's online.
Yeah,
And
live
so,
online.
yeah, so it's
Anytime
online. So
from anywhere.
basically, anywhere in the world you can join as long as you have the internet, to
Right.
put it simply.
All right, cool. So this is the yeah, want to activate your intuition, develop your clairvoyance, and you've got it's an early Black Friday special too, so some special pricing on there. I see. So we're gonna we'll I'll put the link in the comments for on Facebook here, and then we can share it with you with the interview as well. But yeah, I mean, it just sounds like a really great. What do you think? What will people kind of leave with from just that introduction?
From just the introduction,
Mhm.
they'll get an idea of, is this really for me? Because yes,
Mhm.
I teach the tools, but then it's up to the person to actually do them. And
Yeah,
so
and let's make that point, right? It's like, I say this all the time when it comes to skill building. You don't get a skill by learning about it, you get a skill by using it, right? So
absolutely,
you'll learn about them and they will get some use, right? But
absolutely.
you have to continue other because it really is, I mean, basically it's a set of skills that you're teaching, right?
That's exactly it. It's a set of skills. And then if you choose to do it, then you can start to shift things. So I have several different clients in Silva grads that they came to the class because they had a health condition. They're like, I
Mhm,
am doing this with my traditional doctor and this
mhm,
and this. That's fantastic. And they're like, and I also want to have my brain and my body working for this same outcome. And so
mhm,
in combination with it, I mean,
mhm.
literally, I this one grad, she's amazing. She literally healed pancreatitis. So
Wow.
like, if you knew how much she was using all the tools, because
Mhm.
she's dedicated, she's like, I desire this outcome.
Right.
And so I'm willing to work with my body and use
I'm
the
not just
tools.
gonna try it. I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
I've committed. And so what she has done and how she's reversed it. And her doctor was like,
What
because it didn't make sense, because
Yeah,
that's not typical. And
right,
so as a result, I mean, and it wasn't just doing Silva method and following
right,
doctor, like she came up with nutrition and all these things to further support, but everything was in full alignment because you are a mind body system. You're not
right,
just doing this sequestered over here. It's like you're a complete
right,
system working together. But she's not the only one. I mean, I have several different students who've taken Silva method to use it for health or for using it for other things to create greater in their life. And that's what they've done. And then they're like, wait, I did this and I want to now use it for this, this, and this. And so it
right.
becomes really fun. So
I
as
love
a
what
result,
I'll tell you
oh,
what
go
that made
ahead.
me think of, what you're saying about that particular thing, right? Healing something like that. Because it gets to me, it reminded me of, to me, that's one of a really fascinating thing about how our bodies work, right? Because, so for example, if you have an injury, right? And then you heal the injury, but it's a lot. How often is it that it never feels quite fully healed? Like maybe you
Yeah.
just like a really bad sprain, or you broke something, right? And it's like, okay, you're over the worst of it. But it's always, that was 10 years ago. It's still always stiff, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So here's this fundamental question, because we tend to just kind of accept that, like that's just how it is, right?
Yeah.
But I would say, look, if it was 10 years ago, every single, let's say it was your ankle, okay?
Yeah.
So every cell in that area has been replaced
Absolutely. Multiple
multiple
times.
times in that time. And up
Yeah.
until that injury, your body was making cells all the time, and your body was making uninjured cells, right? It was making cells that,
Yeah.
like, so why, just because you had this injury 10 years ago, why ever since then has your body been replacing these cells I'm not even saying the cells themselves are injured. I don't want to get into that, but like it's been recreating this
Yeah.
thing. Why is your brain now, right, overseeing the production over and over of an ankle that, why isn't it just back to perfect? Because it's been replaced multiple times. And this is what, right? I mean, and a lot of people never even ask that question, but this is part of the answer, at least in the answer. It's like, right? Because your brain is
Yep.
what's overseeing all of that.
Exactly. And so there's still some interference. There's
Yeah,
still some interference in there. There's something in the subconscious or under the hood that needs to be cleaned up,
right,
reprogrammed, deprogrammed, because it's still affecting that. Because
right.
literally, our bodies are so magical. Yes,
Mhm.
you may have an injury, but if it's been 10 years, guess what? There's some cleanup to be done under there. And it
Right.
is absolutely possible to do. I mean, I have some clients literally they have programmed themselves to look younger. And you would look at them and you would never know their age. But they're also
Right.
not just programming it, they're following what their body needs and requires. So if the body needs different types of nutrition, if you're not getting the nutrition from your food, are you supplementing? And it's really becoming, I would say a huge part of it is becoming good friends with your body and not just friends and good
Mhm.
friends, but you can become best friends with your body because as you are a whole body system and you're
Yes.
using your mind in that way, well, your body's like, wait, I don't want to be left out. Let's do all of us.
Yes, exactly. Right. It's so fascinating. I love this kind of stuff because really, like your body, and I say this all the time, like your body does know how to heal itself from
Mhm.
absolutely everything. That doesn't mean it always can,
Yeah.
right?
And sometimes you need a little
There
help.
needs to have the nutrition, it needs to have the whatever. So sometimes we have our bodies under circumstances that the fact that it knows how to heal itself, it doesn't matter because the circumstances are too stacked up against it,
Yeah.
right?
And sometimes the input, if you have
Hmm.
too much input that's not favorable for that
Hmm.
outcome. So, what's your
Hmm.
diet? Not just what you're physically eating, but what
Right,
are you inputting into your head? What are
right,
the beliefs?
exactly.
What are you saying to yourself?
Right.
Because a
Well,
lot of those can be
it's right.
interference.
Because those, when I say circumstances, like, yeah, if you're, like, let's take the injury. If you're continuing to do something physically that's always re-injuring it, right? Like the fact that even if the brain was now working better, right? Even if you cleared
Yeah.
that, daily thing of it is going to be interference. But the opposite is true too, where even if everything's you're getting the right nutrition, you're not doing things to re-injure it, everything that you could sort of physically measure should add up to your body should be making all healthy good cells there, but the the energetic, the beliefs and everything in the brain is saying, no, 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 it
Yeah.
doesn't matter that you're getting all the right nutrition. You have to have both.
Exactly. We are a complete system, and that's really what it comes down to. And once you understand that, it's like, wait a second, what I'm thinking, what I'm inputting into my head, that absolutely is affecting how I'm feeling. So if you're
Right.
not saying kind things to yourself, well, your body's going to act and react accordingly because that's the command center. Like
Right.
that's the command center for
It
everything.
is, right. Yeah.
And so the way I see Silva, it's basically you're defragging the computer. You're like, wait a second, some of this is not working. We got to defrag it. We've got to
Yeah.
clean up those viruses and then keep moving forward so you can create greater ease. And then once you take the class and you've got all the tools, I do a couple of things. Like, every month I have a complimentary Silva graduate class. So once you're a graduate, you can come to that if you're wanting to practice the tools. I
Wonderful.
also do a live meditation the first Wednesday of the month. That's also complimentary that you can come and do that. So if you're like, hey, I need some extra support, there's some, you know?
Awesome. Awesome. All right. This has been so fabulous. I want to wrap it up partly because I want to be able to go and put that link in there. People can go sign up. But thank you so much for sharing all of this. And yeah, what's your what's one thing you'd just like to kind of leave people with in terms of what's possible for them?
I think one of the biggest things is it doesn't really matter your background. It doesn't matter what you've been through. If you desire better, you can create it. It's just a matter of having the tools. So then
Mhm.
you can go ahead and utilize those tools. Now, Silva is not like you do it once, you're one and done, and like everything's
Yeah.
perfect. You literally have to use the tools. So if
Right.
you're wanting to activate, your intuition, awesome. That will happen in the 4 days. Then it's practice, 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 use it, use it, use it. And then you will start to see how it increases and that you'll receive even more information. This literally happened to me just the other day. I was driving on the freeway and very clearly I heard, get off now. And I'm like, I'm not for like 20 more miles. It's like, get off now. And I literally just followed it. I got off the freeway, not knowing that literally several feet ahead of me, there was about to be a 10-car pileup. So I got off and it literally just happened. And I looked up and I saw it on the freeway like, thank you.
Mm.
Thank you. And then I went through the light and I got back on the freeway. So there's those little things of information where you're like, thank you so much. Yes, thank you. I'm just going to keep
Well,
saying thank you.
yeah, or not so little things. I mean, that's huge. So,
Yeah.
all right. So the tools are available, right? It's just time
Yes.
to learn them and use them. All right. Thank you so much for being here.
You're
And
welcome. And
we're gonna,
everyone's welcome to come sign up.
yeah.
You can go to heal.me/Silva Method West, or you can go to subscribe page/Silva Method. And we have everything for the Silva introduction, as well as
Mhm.
if you do sign up for the Silva introduction and want to take the 4-day, all of the monies from the introduction are applied to the 4 days. So you basically
Beautiful.
get a
Oh,
discount.
that's great. Great extra thing to know. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks
Okay.
anyway. Thanks. I mean, thanks so much for being here. And I will post that link for people right away. And we'll see what starts to open up in people's lives from starting to use these amazing tools. So, all right.
Thank you so much, Anne. All right, take care.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.